Okay, I'm still on the reacting stage, but I am going to have to react to something else. My aunt actually caught my attention because she gave me a heads up that there was at least there was a person that she was listening to, I think, that is actually challenging Trump to actually face charges or face every piece of scrutiny and criminal liability possible. Now, I'm not sure if this was actually real, so I looked up YouTube and I saw an entry about, yeah, the title, Colombian President Gustavo Petro Urrego. Urrego, as it is spelled, Urrego, speaks at 2025 United Nations General Assembly. Basically, that's where we are. Just doesn't matter. Filler words, repeats, it doesn't matter. Pauses, definitely remove that. Definitely, yes. I am going to remove those. Can I, make sure that the voice is isolated and I can actually keep vocal? Yeah, keep the vocals. How many pieces of the vocals are there anyway? So maybe I could do that. Can it happen? No, 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 no. Too long. It's too long. It takes too long. 236 left. Holy shit. Okay, okay. I'll just render it as it is right now. I guess I can do that. All right. So give me a moment. I'll be back in a bit. Now I haven't heard yet the entire speech, but from what I can actually understand from the short form video that I actually watched briefly from my aunt. The summary of it is that Gustavo Petro, the Colombian president himself, is challenging Trump because of Trump's encouragement to use white privilege and weaponry to actually make people suffer. You see, the issues that are actually happening in America are seen all over the world because of the age of the internet. Because of the this is the age of the internet. It's 2025. Okay, let's just be real about that thing. All right, we're in that age in which we are expected to actually see almost everything happen almost instantaneously, especially as America powers up the entertainment industry. Not only the entertainment industry, but also news sites everywhere. Okay, so basically that's where we are as a society. We see everything almost instantaneously. And what are we exactly seeing about Donald Trump right now? We're actually seeing horrendous treatment of humanity, and every bit of his statements encourage his supporters to be violent, to mistreat other people, because they want to be like him. They actually imitate him to the point that they try to be obsessed with him and they try to die for him. This is how extremist this all should look like. It should be. Not because of just political leanings. No, I am not just talking about just the political leanings, but the ideology that Donald Trump is dropping all over the United States. That ideology is spreading to all corners, all corners, all points of the world, to all points. This isn't just an isolated. This isn't something so isolated just in America. It is so much worse. It is so much worse. So that's the summary that I'm actually hearing. So far, that's the actual summary that I'm hearing. While I'm actually thought I'd actually explain what I understand from that short form vid that my aunt showed me, and it's very telling. It does reflect on Trump's attitudes, the kind of attitudes that he's showing today. If you guys, I'm going to be repeating for those who are actually only just seeing it right now on the QR code. If you guys want to actually watch the entire speech untethered without any interruption, you guys can actually check it out here. Without actually going through my reaction, you guys can actually go ahead and leave comments down to that video on YouTube. But as for me, I am the type to make sure to skip right to the really nitty-gritty moments. All right? We are skipping right to the nitty-gritty moments at this time. So we are going to get right into this. Colombian President Gustavo Petro Urrego speaks at 2025 United Nations General Assembly. Here we go.
The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Gustavo Petro Urrego, President of the Republic of Colombia. I request protocol to escort His Excellency and invite him to address the Assembly.
President of the General Assembly, this is my last statement as President here. It's the fourth time. In my first speech, I announced it was very likely that there would be conflicts in Ukraine and Gaza and Palestine, and that I suggested that there be a peace conference. But those who don't have bombs or large budgets are not heated here. Well, 4 years later, the horrific situation in Palestine did not lead me to think that almost the same thing could happen in the Colombian Caribbean area, where unarmed young people are being shot at with missiles in the open seas. And now we are in a different situation.
Colombia. Hold on.
Perhaps it's more global.
Ouch. I think this news has not actually reached my shores because it's not exactly entirely mainstream on my end. Colombian Caribbean. Oh boy. Oh boy. Armed young guys shot up with missiles? Isn't that overkill? Well, it just depends on the situation and how rules of engagement actually work. Maybe if the young guys are actually with an organized crime group to a point that this organized crime group is dealing with the worst type of things that one person should not do. Maybe they deserve it, but I'm still not sure about the context of this.
Likely that there would be conflicts in Ukraine and
I just rewinded it a bit.
And that I suggested that there be a peace conference, but those who don't have bombs or large budgets are not heated here. Well, 4 years later, the horrific situation in Palestine did not lead me to think that almost the same thing could happen in the Colombian Caribbean area, where unarmed young people are being shot at with missiles.
Oh, the same thing that was happening at the Gaza Strip is happening within the Colombian Caribbean areas like that? Oh, now I see. Wait, what? No way. No way. Wait, hold on. Oh, I see. Holy shit. Colombia's president calls the United States attacks on alleged drug boats an act of tyranny. Oh, shit. Oh, boy. Oh my God. Oh my God, we're at this point now. Holy shit. This is not good. What is going on? What is going on? Hold on. I just need to understand where this is. Basically, okay. Oh yeah. Now I remember. We remember very much, if we're actually talking about Trump during his first weeks or months, that he would be directly targeting cartels, drug cartels, not just in Mexico, but in other parts of South America. We understand that he's doing that, right? So he has reached the Colombian Caribbean areas already, and he targeted drug boats. Now I understand the context as to why Gustavo Petro Urrego is speaking like this. Basically, the missiles are overkill. Actually, now I get the context. All right, let's continue this. This is a big deal.
In the open seas. And now we are in a different situation. Perhaps it's more global, a kind of stone age that has descended on all of humankind. Missiles against 17 unarmed young people in the Caribbean Sea, some of them Colombians. The persecution, imprisonment, and expulsion of millions of migrants, missiles that have killed some 70,000 people in Gaza, the lack of action on the climate crisis. All
He's even calling Trump on the lack of climate crisis engagement. All right, okay. I'll praise him for this one. Okay.
this is linked, and all this has the same cause. Migration is simply an excuse so that a rich society, rich, white, and racist, believes itself to be the superior race and is not realizing that its leaders are leading it to the abyss, to its own distinction, together with the rest of humanity.
Well, that's unfortunately Donald Trump for you. I must actually agree. That's actually Donald Trump for you. Unfortunately, that actually does sound and is identifiable to Donald Trump. He is a personification of executive white privilege. Let's see where else this goes.
They said that the missiles in the Caribbean were used to stop drug trafficking. That is a lie. Stated here in this very rostrum. In 2023 and 2024 were years when the largest amount of cocaine was seized, and over 700 drug traffickers were extradited to the United States and Europe. I extradited them, and my government confiscated the cocaine and we didn't shoot a single missile, nor did we kill any youths. The years where I was able to prove that it's more effective to substitute coca crops than eradicate them, enforced eradication using poison, and forcing peasants to use it. The violent war against drugs was a failure, and I replaced it with an effective anti-trafficking policy, not based on a mix-up between an inert substance, that is drugs, with people who actually use it and practice it. But what was necessary is to destroy dialogue and to shoot missiles. Was it really necessary on unarmed, poor young people in the Caribbean? The anti-drug policy is not meant to stop cocaine that is coming to the United States. The anti-drug policy is to dominate the peoples of the South as a whole. You shouldn't look at the drugs. You should look at who has the power and who dominates. This is why
You shouldn't look at you shouldn't look at the drugs and how much there is. You should look at those who have the power. Wait, hold on.
policy is to dominate the peoples of the South as a whole. You shouldn't look at the drugs. You should look at who has the power.
Yeah, basically drug barons, drug lords, if they have connections, extremely deep connections and deep pockets that can entice government officials and politicians, mind you, okay? They can keep the narrative in control that the government is incompetent and that they're letting this happen. But here's the thing, okay? Here's the thing. The only reason that the drug problem is increasing, and I actually believe this guy, is because the actual use of the drug is being encouraged. The actual use of the drug is being encouraged to the point that it becomes a social acceptance. So when it becomes a social acceptance, that's the most harmful. That's the most harmful thing. You are ingesting dangerous drugs that go into your system, and it can eventually kill you. Okay, it can eventually end you. And normally, other new users would not give a damn because they want to actually know what the thrill is of using and consuming these illegal drugs themselves, because social norms demand them to do that. And at the same time, okay, they want to go against the order of strict adherence to the law, because they may have been persecuted as a rough upbringing to them, probably, because most users and most distributors of these of the illegal drugs, they are basically always facing a rough time growing up. Probably they have a bad environment. They experience bad parenting themselves because they have terrible parents. Probably that's what I was actually thinking. They have a bad environment. They have a bad household. Everything about their life situation becomes so bad that they actually turn to crime. That they are economically deprived. These people who are economically deprived cannot think of work because they're trying to survive and they're trying to get away from the harsh reality of their life. So they turn to the illegal drug trade and manufacturing because they think it is a better alternative. Okay? They think it's a better alternative than to face life itself. But what these new guys do not know is that the drug trade and manufacturing of illegal drugs can kill them. Even if it brings in money, and even if it actually relieves them to the point that it can actually be good for them and their own short-term futures, it would absolutely destroy their lives if they get caught up in it, because it's not just the group or organizations that they are in that are actually interested in the illegal drug trade and manufacturing. It's not just their group. It's multiple around South America. It's not just one, but there are multiple. So basically, there is armed warfare happening between these groups and organizations. But it's not only just those. It's not only just them actually waging conflicts against each other. It's other governments who are absolutely hating on the drug trade and manufacturing itself. And at this time, Donald Trump has taken it to himself to engage drug cartels because of this. And targeting these drug cartels, he also includes anyone who is unarmed and is only part of the manufacturing process, but never the type of people who would ever hold a gun. So basically, they're in the crosshairs too. They're in the crosshairs too, and basically harmless. They're just trying to find a good high in life. They're trying to find a good relief in life. But does that make them equally as threatening? To a point in the long run, yes. But in the short term, eliminating them using lead poisoning. Basically, you just had to point that barrel or just point the explosive right at them, and it all stop, and the entire drug trade comes to a halt. The entire drug trade and manufacturing comes to a halt. Is it really that simple? I ask myself, when it comes to actually going up against drug cartels, I can understand where it's going, but it is going to also be messy, considering that if he actually declared open warfare against the drug trade and manufacturing by the cartels, if he's declared war on those types of cartels, he's also putting unarmed civilians in the crosshairs as well. And let me tell you, being someone from the Philippines who has also experienced a sort of phase in the Philippines, I can understand where the Colombians are coming from, because if you're trying to lead yourself to a real good normal life, a real peaceful life, you do not want to be in a situation where guns are pointed towards you. Could be pointed towards someone else, and you can actually avoid conflict altogether because they're not meant for you. But you don't want to be in a situation where the gun is being pointed at you instead. You want to lead. You want to lead and live a peaceful life. So as unarmed civilians who think about self-defense if they have to, because that's the best they can definitely that's the best you can actually lead yourself to. Self-defense. You can defend yourselves from criminals. You can defend yourselves from the wrong types, right? But considering that even unarmed civilians or unarmed personnel actually get targeted just because they're part of the illegal drug trade and manufacturing, it doesn't make them necessarily targets. Absolutely not kids. Absolutely not minors. Absolutely those who are just by themselves being as themselves. So I can understand where the Colombian president right now is coming from here. Unarmed personnel casualties turn the entire purpose of the warfare against drugs very, very ugly. In the Philippines, there were a lot of civilian casualties in this. This is why I somehow feel for this. I somehow feel for this guy. All right, let's continue.
Who dominates. This is why I speak to you as a decertified president. I've been decertified by President Trump without him having any right to do this, a human right or divine right or any sensible reason. They want to force by violence tens of thousands of peasants to do what the U.S. government wants to do, which are influenced by mafia groups in Colombia. Thousands of peasants are massacred in Colombia by politicians who were senators, who were presidents, who were ministers that were bribed and on the payroll of the drug mafia. And at the same time, they were allies of the extreme right based in Florida, the United States, and now allies of the Trump administration. They've been allied for decades with drug lords, cocaine drug lords in Colombia. They were allies, and so they led this anti-drug policy from Washington. I don't know if Trump even knows that his foreign policy towards Colombia, Venezuela, and towards the Caribbean is based on advice from Colombians who are allies of the
United States. Oh my God! As he is speaking, U.S. delegation, U.S. representatives, they're leaving. Oh my God! They don't want to hear this. Oh my God. They're leaving because they know what he's saying is true. Holy shit.
And so they led this anti-drug policy from Washington. I don't know if Trump even knows that his foreign policy towards Colombia, Venezuela, and towards the Caribbean is based on advice from Colombians who are allies of
Look at this. They're leaving.
Cocaine mafia. I myself denounced these politicians, including the paramilitaries, drug traffickers, and naming them by their names in the Congress of Colombia when I was senator, and many times they wanted to kill me because of that. And they did not want me to become president. They wanted me to shut up. And now they They don't want another progressive government to be reelected. That is why I've been personally decertified, and they have spread calumny against Colombia.
You know, I really don't mind if he actually is progressive or conservative, but let me just tell you, when your own country is embroiled in illegal activity and you only feel yourself helpless, you're only doing whatever you can to try and make citizens actually live better to a point. So he is an experienced guy who has been seeing the politics between activity and life of people and life of all people from all walks of life. He's coming up as decertified in the lower government positions, and then he's decertified again by Donald Trump just because. The reality is, Colombians are becoming a target of the drug trade and manufacturing because this is coming from within their borders. But Trump doesn't care. This is apparently still hurting Trump's bottom line. Okay? This is still hurting Trump's bottom line, which is make America great again. Even if it means removing foreigners in the equation that have remotely anything to do with crime or not. This is disgusting of Trump. This is absolutely just disgusting of Trump, dude.
Colombia has confiscated the highest amount of cocaine in the history of the country under my government, and I've been decertified. In Colombia, we have managed to stop the increase in the rate of expansion of coca crops that was 43% under the government of Duque and has dropped to 3%, and Duque was not decertified.
Hey, excuse me? Hold on. Let me just reset everything, so give me a moment here.
The Assembly
605, sorry about that. I just needed to actually reset the graphics card for a bit. Anyway, back to it.
The amount of cocaine in the history of the country under my government, and I've been decertified. In Colombia, we have managed to stop the increase in the rate of expansion of coca crops that was 43% under the government of Duque and has dropped to 3%, and Duque was not decertified.
You know, it's really just weird. You know, I don't think this is weird. And now that I think about it, why was Duque not decertified because of the problems that the drug trade and manufacturing has caused in Colombia, and that Gustavo Petro Urrego himself has been decertified because drug trade and manufacturing had actually slowed down by a lot. I'm sorry, the difference is 40%, right?
That was 43% under the government of Duque and has dropped to 3%.
40% difference, bro. 40% difference, and Urrego's being decertified. The previous president wasn't because of the problems of the drug trade and manufacturing. So basically, there's a red flag within the mentality of people who are thinking about the drug trade and manufacturing. There are more people individually who are believing that it actually helps them than destroys them. He doesn't think of the entire they don't think of the entire society as a whole. Yeah. Colombia is cooked. Oh boy. Look, as much as I want to see the cartels crumble, I'm seeing more of a concern with the mentality of people who are thinking about the advantages and disadvantages of the trade and manufacturing of these substances, because they should stop thinking about themselves for once, even if they had a rough upbringing, even if they have a reality check. Here's the thing. Every person is expected to be better and to be a model, right? But they want to take it easier. They want to take an easier path and not be a model, and then just have the lots of fun that they think that they deserve. Honestly, that's what they think. And honestly, Urrego has a very big point in this. There is a definite problem with it within what the populace thinks about the trade and manufacturing of illegal substances like this. Not a good sign for Colombia. Not a good sign.
And Duque was not decertified. He was who had someone who financed his campaign who was a drug trafficker, and instead they've decertified me. So the anti-drug policy is not aimed at the public health of a society, but rather to prop up a policy of domination. They don't want to. They don't want to give the power to the people. The young people that were killed using missiles in the Caribbean were not from Hamas. They were not from other terrorist groups. They were poor Colombians. And with apologies to those who dominate the United Nations, there should be criminal cases against those officials of the United States for doing this, including the utmost official, President Trump, that allowed the shooting of missiles against these young people who were simply trying to escape poverty.
You know what I actually remind myself with Donald Trump being challenged to a criminal case at all? You know who that reminds me of? Rodrigo Roa Duterte, who is currently sitting right now under detainment by the International Criminal Court. I think we've come to a point in which we're starting to understand that certain leaders and certain former leaders deserve to be detained because of their horrific acts against humanity. The war against drugs does not help if there are way too many civilian casualties and way too many casualties that involve unarmed personnel. Especially if the aggressor party does not care when it comes to rules of engagement in particular. Basically, this is just Donald Trump actually roughhousing a lot and doesn't care and wants to keep breaking noses even if those people haven't done anything personal to him. So yeah, not only is Colombia cooked with its populace thinking better individually when it comes to the trade and manufacturing of illegal substances like this, but America is cooked if its citizens keep thinking that the war against drugs is better off with everyone involved in the trade and manufacturing of drugs to equally be in the crosshairs, even no matter if the personnel is armed or not. Make America Great Again is such a cult-like personality by itself. And I hate Donald Trump for proliferating that idea more.
Youths who in a speedboat who might have had a certain amount of drugs were not drug traffickers. They were simply poor youth. But the real drug traffickers live somewhere else, not in America, not in Latin America. So it's easy to shoot missiles against the speedboats with migrants and accusing them of terrorism and drug trafficking when they don't have a single weapon to defend themselves. When the real drug traffickers live in New York, here. Just a few blocks from here, in Miami.
I think he speaks truth. The traffickers may actually be among the entire populace of the United States. That's right. There are street distributors. There are street sellers. Okay, there are street sellers already, and there are some small-time producers within the same city. So he's got a point.
And they reach agreements with the DEA, and they're allowed.
Reach agreements with the DEA means there is a massive bribery scheme also happening. Here's the thing. The DEA wants the cut of the profits. Drug Enforcement Agency wants the cut of the profits. And do you know why the raids are happening less and less? It's because the bribery scheme is working. Unfortunately, the bribery scheme is working against the DEA, which is disgusting.
To traffic in Africa, in Russia, in China, but not in the United States, a country that has not managed to reduce its consumption of cocaine because it's drug addicts, or rather, they did manage to reduce the consumption of cocaine simply because their addicts switched to another type of drug, fentanyl, which is much deadlier. This fentanyl is produced in the industrial heartland of the United States, here. Not far from here. And the consumers are here as well. It's produced and consumed in the United States. That is the worst. They're addicted to fentanyl and to gasoline, the two main poisons of life in the world.
You know, gasoline is not meant to be consumed by the human body. I don't know where people actually get the mentality to actually consume gasoline and think that it's actually good for them. I do not know how they think of that. They've got to be insane. I mean, I got to actually think about someone who is actually consuming gasoline, and I think of Trevor Phillips. I think he's insane, but at the same time, I think there's some part of him that it was all stemmed because he had a rough upbringing right from the beginning, but mostly insanity.
Gasoline is even worse than fentanyl. Only the black-skinned people here, those who are ancestral here, that were thousands of years have been here, or young people, or women who don't want to see their children die of any color of their skin. The people are still hooked on fentanyl or hooked on television. Only they can stop this domination by the United States. The people who have taken to the streets in California, in New York, in Philadelphia, where the Liberty Bell stands, in spite of the National Guard that Trump sends out against its own people to shut them up, to the states that are free. These states are no longer uniting their efforts in the face of tyranny.
And Orego is still not finished. Oh my god. All right, give me a bit. I'll be right back. Okay, so we're back in it. Sorry about that. I just need to make sure that things are cooking up. Let's continue.
States are no longer uniting their efforts in the face of tyranny. The President of the United States does not know that 1 million Latin Americans have died. The largest share of them from Colombia. And another million will die in North America in 10 years because of fentanyl. Cocaine killed 3,000 people a year today. Fentanyl kills 130 per year, 30 times more. That is the outcome of 30 years by the United States of a policy that is absurd and that is leading its society to the horrific death due to drugs that kill the brain. And in this situation, Trump not only allows missiles to be fired at young people in the Caribbean, does not only imprison migrants, but also allows missiles to be killed against children, women, and old people in Gaza. He is an accomplice to genocide.
That's because he's using Israel as a proxy. I know where he's coming from with this one. But Israel is doing things all by themselves. The problem is that Israel is also being supported by America, and Israel is allowed to do things by themselves. That's why a lot more people think that America is using Israel as the proxy to actually eliminate terrorist organizations or groups by force, not caring of civilian casualties in its wake. It is an ugly thing for conflicts. It is an ugly thing for conflicts at every time that there are civilian casualties in this. Now, considering that Hamas is not a country, the Palestinian region is not a country, certifiably that way, it does not give Israel the entire to have a brutal rule of engagement that does not care about the civilian populace. Definitely, they need to work hard on their combat prowess and their restrict. So yeah, I can see where Orego is coming with this.
It is a genocide, and we need to prevent it. This forum is a mute witness to a genocide in a world where we thought that this was something only a legacy of Hitler. Here, they don't speak of life, of the climate crisis. What is happening is the death of thousands of. Meanwhile, we in Colombia have not increased the rate of killings. We have the lowest unemployment rate in the country this century. We have the lowest unemployment rates. We have developed our agriculture by 10% and our industry by 5%. We have more tourists than ever who have come to see the beauties of our country, our cultural and natural beauties. And we are seeking peace by negotiating with drug traffickers and with rebels. I will always be ready to discuss, to negotiate, to save lives, and to eradicate coca crops, but based on their own voluntary decision by Colombian peasants. Let us not be bribed by the drug traffickers, as was the case in previous governments in Colombia.
Oh my goodness, actually. Oh boy. I get what he's saying. Basically, Colombians are being baited by bribery. Ordinary Colombians are being baited by bribery. Basically, the cartels have power because they got the means to make people relieved or high to a point, or probably dirt rich. And they're also baiting Americans to the point that Americans are overkill when it comes to their methods, when it comes to military deployment against these cartels in particular. So yeah, cartels are thinking rather critically to preserve their own existence. I can't help but feel really, really disappointed about how Trump is not looking at the bigger picture. And as this is one of the reasons why he should change the way he actually thinks about consumption and manufacturing of illegal substances like this. The war against drugs is costly, but the better thing that one should do, basically, counter dialogue. There's dialogue about usage of drugs, right? Engage in counter dialogue as to the cons and disadvantages of drug use. I mean, why not? Instead of Trump actually forcing an issue to a halt by use of violence, he should definitely use words. But no, Trump doesn't like to use intelligence or his intelligence. He likes to use lead poisoning. Okay? He likes to use lead poisoning as a much better way to actually teach people, don't do this, or we will. And his messaging basically, don't do this, or we will end you. And then if the people do it, bang, no questions asked. Honestly, a very ugly policy.
And 25,000 hectares have already been eradicated voluntarily. We have been successful in this new policy. It's not an anti-drug policy, but an anti-drug traffickers policy. That is something different. And we're grateful to the countries that have helped us, such as Qatar, Cuba, Mexico, Vatican, Norway, Brazil, and Venezuela. We don't want to thank those who want to sow war between us. People of the world, listen. Latin America does not only mean drug trafficking or coke or cocaine. Latin America has a massive, massive potential for clean electrical energy, renewable alternate energy based on wind, water. The United States has a huge demand for energy, and 70% of it is filled by fossil fuels, in other words, based on carbon, coal, gas. Latin America is developing its clean energy potential, and we can satisfy the entire demand of the United States for energy. What is necessary is investment, and we would make the biggest contribution to fighting climate change.
Yeah, that's what Trump doesn't like. When he gets one-upped by countries that can actually do better. This is why he decertified this guy, because this guy is able to actually get into the climate change crisis by actually being proactive to change how climate change works in Colombia. So this is probably one of the reasons why Trump hates this guy, because this guy does it better. Oh my God. Trump just likes the moronic sub-1 IQ type of supporter. And friend, not the type who is smarter than him, not the type who is just as smart as him. He wants the less intelligent to aid him. The less intelligent. And look where it's getting him. Look where it's getting Trump. Idiocracy is in the works. We're not that far now. It is bad.
Given the huge potential for clean energy and the capacity to absorb by the Amazon, Latin America can make a tremendous contribution to save the life in this planet. All that is necessary is $600 billion to develop this potential. Africa and Europe can do the same. This decarbonization would provide us with over $1.3 trillion. This is money that is already in the treasuries of the United States, Europe.
And what Trump doesn't want to do is invest in something that could waste his money. And do you know what he spends his time on when it comes to everything in regards to what he loves to do? He likes to spend every freaking day of his presidency golfing. You know what I think of a golfing leader at every day who does that every day? I think of him as lazy. I think of him as non-productive. Do something else than golfing. Absolutely, just do something else than golfing.
China, but not a dollar is spent because it's not profitable, or rather, it might be profitable in terms of human life, including life in the United States, in Europe, and China. However, they don't want to depend on Latin America and Africa. They know that to bring together the clean energy of Africa and Latin America would not only decarbonize the planet, save it from the climate collapse, but it would also change the global power which is discussed here. But that power is spoken in terms of bombs. But this would truly create a global democracy and change the means of production, because life and humanity would become the priorities, and they would edge out greed. Greed is the poison of life.
Yep,
And
that's true.
spoke of this, Chairman Mao. According to science, we have 10 more years until we reach a point of no return in terms of the climate. And once we reach that point, we won't be able to do anything. We will simply observe the disasters, and we'll feel them in our own families and cities, because it will be irreversible. The extinction of life, extinction of human life there'll be an irreversibility of the process, and no technology,
Oh,
no political or social force will be able to do anything about it to stop this collapse. And we only have 10 years left. That is
we have 10 years, guys. By 2035, we'll be doomed if we don't change course. Basically, we have to give everything to China or something. Yeah, we're gonna have to figure everything out by the end of the decade. In 5 years, there better be a plan. There better be a plan.
what science tells us. But here people don't believe in science. The most powerful man in the world does not believe in science. That is the irrationality. And Germany, the country of great philosophers, of Kant, Feuerbach, and others, became prey of irrationalism in 1933, and today it's this country that is becoming irrational.
There it is. There's the irony. And there are... Oh, boy.
The solution is to stop consuming fossil fuels and to quickly switch to water, wind. But the word decarbonization sounds subversive at the conferences of the most powerful countries, the G7 or G20 or Davos, among the rich. Just as 5 centuries ago, the word democracy sounded subversive here, or in Bogota, and in Paris, and in Madrid. These dollars that I mentioned here, 600 billion or 1.3 trillion. This is just a little more than what the rich countries pledged at the COP in Paris, and they have not fulfilled their pledges because they are not interested in decarbonization. And what has come is basically loans from multilateral banks, which are just small amounts compared to what is needed. The climate crisis.
Oh.
That in all public budgets, investment in decarbonization and adaptation should be the priority. A global financial policy is necessary that is different.
That is hard. That is hard for developed countries to do, especially if they think of their own. If they only think of their own pocket. Trump is not the type to want to spend for a better America, to spend for a better, greener America, because he wants to keep lining his own pockets for his own preferences, and that's it.
The debt risk premium should be abolished. Which countries are the riskiest? They are the countries that have the highest greenhouse gas emissions, such as this one. These are the riskiest countries. Whereas the countries that absorb CO2, and we have jungles and a lot of water in the south, we absorb the CO2 of the north, but the market does not agree with that. So the debt of the poorest countries must be forgiven. There should be debt swaps for adaptation and mitigation and investment in the climate crisis. So
I will definitely not be surprised that the countries that have the most number of trees and the countries that have less urbanization and more observance to nature would be the ones who would be surviving most likely upon 2035 and the progressing years after that, because there is truth to actually absorbing carbon emissions using nature, using trees, using the green. It is absolutely impaired. It is absolutely critical that we actually have to act. He is actually saying something real about climate change here. If we don't change our direction at this point, yes, we will not be coming back to what it is right now. We will not be able to revert any changes to the climate by then.
People from the United States and those from Wall Street, from London, you want to collect the interest payments from the debt of our countries. What you will find eventually is cemeteries, because we'll all be dead. The money will be useless in the midst of all the cemeteries. Another subversive word.
Damn, he does not hold back. He does not hold back on this shit, dude.
Is to plan. A global plan. The word plan has been forgotten because it was not necessary to plan, because to plan is anathema. And there was a fundamentalist belief in the markets, thinking that markets would bring happiness. The Swiss economist Arras said this. And in fact, the market leads to an abyss. It leads to death, as we are already witnessing today. Malras, that was his name, was wrong. Neoliberalism,
Oh my God,
was mistaken from the very beginning, and it's been guiding our countries for the past 50 years, based on completely erroneous formulas. The plans should be binding on national states. There should be a global democracy supervised by a Security Council that does not have the right to veto, because we have to understand that the market will not resolve the climate crisis, because it has produced that crisis. It was
oh yeah, there has to be a change in how the market thinks,
capital, which is based on
because they always go for profit first. Yep, if markets are absolutely profit first, yeah, they would not think of anything else other than profit.
unequal relationship between those who own the means that create the carbon and those who work, who are salaried employees. And this is a system that has to produce more and more objects that the boss, the owner, has to sell. And the same thing for the production of fossil fuels. That is what has produced the climate crisis. Produce more, to consume more, to sell more, and thus create more carbon, more oil, until we die. But this will not last forever, because carbon and fossil fuels have reached the end, because that is perhaps will mean the end of capital in general, because if it's not the end of capital, it'll be the end of life.
Yep. Basically, the entire market has to change priority here. If they really want to save, if the elites really want to save the planet itself from dying, yes, they must change how the market thinks of profit and what priorities are over profit, because that's the biggest challenge there is when it comes to markets that think of profit only. Okay, it is hard to change a market that thinks of profit only. That's the challenge right there. Okay, so it is hard to change a market that is absolutely profit only when it comes to everything, you know.
The owner of capital is an individual that has power. It's not a thing. It's not some kind of puppet. It is a human being with his greed, a slave to his greed. That is the individual who will seek to make sure that more and more oil is produced in their countries, even if it poisons his life, and continue to dig for more oil, even if it destroys the atmosphere and destroys life. So we have to choose either life or greed, either the Stone Age or local and global democracy.
And Colombia and the South American nations are going to survive than the United States would. I think if America is going to survive this, the president who is thinking of preserving themselves would either, okay, hear me out on this, he would either proactively join those who are combating climate change. Nations, individuals, organizations. The president could do that, and it will benefit the entire world. And it will be a chain reaction to a market that prioritizes profit. Or and this is only an alternative, and I'm not giving any future leader, should not be used by any future leader as reference. The leader who has a lot of military power could potentially strip a country of its resources, even to the point of stealing the research, stealing the people, stealing human personnel, stealing all the riches, just to give themselves a leg up so that the United States can actually better itself, whether it's by environment purposes or by actually enriching themselves more. Enriching themselves to the point that they can actually research for better quality of life improvements to themselves without thinking of everyone else. Basically, America can either join the club of saving the earth because of climate change, or total isolationism to the point that they can only enrich and better themselves and everyone else would die. The latter is more disgusting. You enrich and better yourself and everyone else around the world dies. I wouldn't think that if Donald Trump is still president, obviously he would not be president. He would actually only last up to only 4 years, right? So basically, he would not reach up to 2035. And I hope that the next president would never even think about being a successor to Donald Trump, or never have the ideology of Donald Trump ever. Because anyone who has the ideology of Donald Trump would refuse to even think about climate change as an issue. There is a point to someone actually pointing out that climate change is real and it's actually going to destroy the world during our lifetime. And if you're the type of leader who doesn't want to think of it and wants to always just live in bliss, be like Donald Trump. Be like Donald Trump, golfing every day, spending taxpayer money, doesn't care about current issues, doesn't care about social issues anyway. That's the type of person you should be. That's the type of person you could aspire to be. But will it do everyone else a favor? No. Donald Trump is non-productive. Donald Trump doesn't care about everyone else. And if you want to be a leader who wants to actually follow his example during his 2 terms of presidency, and if you want to actually pursue having a leadership style that is actually compared to his, you are not my friend, and you do not deserve my praise. You do not deserve my respect. Never any ounce of respect. You are hearing it from me.
Freedom or death, as Bolivar said. And that was his slogan, is red and black, white and white, freedom red, death black, and possible peace white. That is what is necessary, is a revolution by the peoples of the world to overcome the climate crisis and not to allow this crisis to reach a global collapse. It is a revolution of the united peoples, of civilizations that need to engage in dialogue, more than states themselves. It is a revolution of entire humanity to save life on the planet, and perhaps with the cooperation of certain governments that want to support life. Today, the United Nations is experiencing a crisis, and there's a need to transform it. Today, we have nation states gathered here who no longer have power. And that no matter how much they vote, they are ignored because because
they don't have veto power and they don't have the influence to change how the world stage works. It makes sense. Nation states must have more veto power than the major powers here.
State has also reached its decadence, its ultimate fall, because capital has become global. It's not contained in a state. Socialism was supposed to be, but Stalin, in fact, in Yalta, condemned a global revolution that was occurring in Spain and in Greece, and it might have occurred in Latin America and other places. So humanity is a new political subject that has emerged rather than the nation state. And so the United Nations has to become a united humanity, even though a diverse but united humanity. A new subject is appearing in human history. This is very important. I think that this is wonderful because we have to overcome the idea of a nation state to become humanity, but that humanity must be united.
converting an entire country to have a nation state mindset in which it thinks of humanity first is another hard challenge that America could potentially succeed in if its leader is not stupid and learns how to think so largely about not only just their preservation, but what their better tactics could actually obtain, what their better tactics could mean for the rest of the world. Because let's just be real, the United States is not the only nation that can actually do that could have the potential to do this. European countries have better solutions than the United States has in regards to humanity first, the humanity first approach, the environment first approach. Okay, I'm gonna check in with I'm gonna see first what type of policies that Europe has more than America in regards to this. And here's hoping that Europe has more policies that are environment first or humanity first. I'm gonna see if any AI sources can actually, if the AI chats can actually do that. Because if there are more policies in Europe than in the United States, I'd be more invested in how Europe actually handles things better than the United States would. Because if the United States has less to no policy at all, that means presidents don't invest enough time. The presidents of the United States do not invest enough time for it, which is bad news.
For that, there needs to be democracy around the world. There needs to be permanent dialogue in the midst of diversity. It is our differences that compels us to coordinate our action at the global level. Dialogue, yes. Humanity, yes. Humanity, profoundly democratic, yes.
Democracy is a good thing as long as humanity is also included in it, and as long as dialogue is included in it. I absolutely agree.
Hopefully, a humanity of based on leaders who are free, rather than a humanity that is basically slaves, just a beast of humanity that shoots missiles against young people, or defenseless armed people, or shoots missiles in a place of the world near where Jesus was born. These problems.
That kind of humanity in which conflict persists over peace. That's what he's saying. That type of humanity should be discouraged. A humanity towards a peaceful solution is what we are always looking for. Not a humanity that persists because of violence.
Cannot be resolved with governments who are bribed by oil producers, by oil corporations.
Basically, we should not be bribed by the elites who profit.
So a new political subject is emerging, a united and diverse humanity, united despite its diverse cultures. Meanwhile, the old societies of Europe are collapsing, and the United States is applauding its new Hitler. It's not listening to its own young people or its older people who died in Europe.
He's not holding back. Holy shit, dude.
In the battlefields of Europe, fighting against Hitler and against his criminal ideology. Today, the same thing is being done as Hitler did, building concentration camps for migrants.
That makes sense. There are parallels to what Adolf has actually been doing. There are parallels to what Adolf has been doing, just because Trump doesn't like migrants. Trump doesn't like a certain section of people. Trump doesn't like a certain type of people. There are ironies in this, considering that there are parallels to Hitler also doing this. So the irony is there, and it should be pointed out repeatedly.
It's stated that migrants are of an inferior race, and they blame them, just like Hitler blamed the Jews. They call them drug traffickers and thieves, whereas the majority of drug traffickers are blonde and have blue eyes, and they keep their fortunes in the largest banks in the world. And they don't live in Bogota or in Gaza. They live in Miami. They are neighbors of President Trump. They live in Dubai or in Paris or London.
Basically, Trump has always believed in the messaging that the traffickers and distributors and manufacturers of illegal substances like drugs always live in shacks, always live in factories, when in fact, most of them live in mansions. Yep. Keep in mind. Keep in mind, this comes from someone who is seeing it from the lens of someone who sees more common sense. Don't believe what the echo chambers tell you. Believe what your eyes and your own senses are telling you. Trump promotes ideas that are not contributed by their own senses. So, if you see secondhand or third-hand information, you've got to learn how to see it in the most common of senses as much as possible instead of blindly believing what is being handed to you or what kind of information is being presented to you. Okay? Do you see the picture now? Do you see the picture, ladies and gentlemen?
They don't live where there's poverty, but the missiles are fired against those where there's poverty. Tren de Aragua is a group that is considered a terrorist group, but that is not true. Migrants are not criminals. They should not be put in concentration camps, expelled and chained up. Immigration is not immigration is due to a blockade against countries like Iraq or Cuba. Immigration is a result of the impoverishment of many countries because of their indebtedness, because of wars unleashed by the United States and Europe to grab their oil. Immigration is
There's always a resource war.
Consequence of a climate crisis that leaves the tropics without water and destroys the environment. The solution to migration is very different from missiles or prisons or camps. There's no higher race. There's no supreme race. Only ignorant extremists think like that. All of humanity is made in God's image. They use immigration as a scapegoat.
Only extremists and radicalists who think violence is the key to everything. Only they think that the absolutes are the solution to everything. That isn't the only way to solve things. That is never the only thing. That is never the only way to solve things.
Do nothing against the climate crisis, which will put an end to life. They use immigration to get the votes of the whites, but what is necessary is to put an end to the consumption of CO2 and oil, and stop drilling and drilling and drilling for oil. We need a different world, a humane world. And
Okay.
first and foremost, we need to stop the genocide in Gaza. Humanity cannot allow a single day more of this genocide. For the genocidal Netanyahu and his allies in
Yeah. Stop giving Israel the power to commit more genocide, basically. Stop making Israel your proxy, Donald Trump. We know what you're doing. We know what you're doing.
Europe and the United States to continue. The United Nations must uphold the decisions of the International Court of Justice. International law is the basis of civilization and of its wisdom as distilled in history, and it must make sure that the decisions of international justice are implemented, are applied. Diplomacy has been tried in Gaza. It could not resolve the situation. I'm sorry, and I'm sorry, President Macron. We can keep insisting in when every single day, every single minute, a missile is fired and destroys the bodies of babies and children in the Arab state of Palestine. Every day there are resolutions that are vetoed in the Security Council. Every day more and more children die. More and more bombs, more and more dead. Perhaps those who do this, who shoot this, are robots. Maybe they don't have their own children.
Oh.
Human. Can we stop the genocide with a vote of the General Assembly? Yes, that's what we should do rather than a vote in the Security Council.
Okay.
Because that is vetoed. United for peace for Palestine. We should.
That means there should be more dialogue for peace.
Keeping force to.
Makes sense to me.
What's necessary to do.
Why aren't the major powers doing anything?
Where it's not blue helmets that are often lack training and they're not ready to do this. No, what we need is a powerful army of countries that do not accept genocide. That is why I invite nations of the world and their peoples, most importantly, as a integral part of humanity, to bring together weapons and armies and to defend Palestine. I invite the armies of Asia and the brave people, the brave Slavic people who defeated Hitler, and the Latin American people of Bolivar, of Garibaldi, and others. I think there's enough. We've had enough words. Today, the time has come to use the slogan of Bolivar: "Freedom or death," because Washington and NATO are killing, and they are spreading totalitarianism at the global level. We need to raise the red and black banner flag without forgetting the white color, which was the color of peace and the color of hope in the heart of humanity. The United States no longer teach democracy, but rather kill democracy.
Yeah, makes sense as well. Why isn't Trump speaking about it? Because he doesn't want to acknowledge the truth that democracy is dying, because he doesn't make democracy possible.
Especially among its immigrants.
America first is not democracy. Let's just be real. The term America first and make America great again, they're not considered democracy.
It's filled with greed. The UN should begin its change by stopping the genocide in Gaza with a army of liberation and salvation, and there should be a decision here taken in the General Assembly without any veto. After Gaza, we can start working on decarbonization so that we can found a truly global democracy, and a new Security Council can be established without any vetoes, and where its decisions would be binding, and the global and national financial system should be based on decentralized capital. That is the way that humankind can regulate capital, to subordinate capital.
Decentralized capital. Keep in mind, okay? Decentralized capital. Okay, so I checked out over ChatGPT on the term of decentralized capital, and this is what I found. This is what the chat found. Okay. Decentralized capital, whether through blockchain networks, community finance pools, or green-focused DAOs, can benefit nations in peaceful and environment-friendly ways in several ways. The first is by resilience and peaceful stability. By distributing financial power away from a single central authority, communities gain economic resilience. This reduces tension over resource control, since people can self-organize funding without depending solely on the state or elite banks. And there's less concentration of wealth, which means fewer flashpoints for conflict. Makes sense, right? The second, empowering local communities. Decentralized funding enables small towns, villages, or regions to raise capital for infrastructure, renewable energy, or local agriculture. And local ownership fosters peaceful cooperation because stakeholders directly benefit rather than competing for limited state subsidies. Number 3, green and sustainable investment. Smart contracts can channel funds automatically into projects that meet sustainability criteria. Parentheses, solar, wind, reforestation, close parentheses. Transparency of decentralized systems discourages corruption. Absolutely. I am definitely smiling at this. Ensuring environmental projects actually happen instead of being siphoned off. Okay. Number 4, cross-border collaboration. Nations can cooperate on climate projects without political tension, since decentralized capital does not rely on a single government's control. This is a big plus. Shared tokenized assets can finance global efforts like carbon capture or clean water access peacefully and inclusively. And number 5, reduced war financing incentives. If capital pools are decentralized and public, it's harder for states or factions to secretly fund armed conflict. Okay. The economic incentive shifts toward collaboration and green innovation instead of resource wars. In short, decentralized capital gives nations tools for self-sufficient growth, transparent cooperation, and ecological stewardship, strengthening peaceful development over extractive or conflict-driven models. This is only idealism, and this is only idealism and information in regards to what is tested. What is tried and tested? I'm going to add another prompt on this. What is tried and tested? I've added that prompt, okay? Basically, community-based finance models, credit unions, cooperatives, and rotating savings groups have long proven how decentralized pooling of capital can fund local projects peacefully. Green bonds and microfinance is another thing. Nations and communities issue bonds or microloans dedicated to renewable energy, farming, and water systems, already tested across Asia, Africa, and Europe. Another is blockchain for transparency. Pilot projects in Kenya, which means solar tokens. Estonia, e-governance, basically. And even El Salvador's Bitcoin treasury show decentralized systems can operate at scale with measurable environmental and social outcomes. There are great examples. These are great examples to making sure that we can succeed in decentralized capital, with decentralized capital. So why isn't Trump doing that? Because he wants it simple, and he wants the easiest way to obtaining things. He doesn't want to work hard for it. He doesn't even want to sweat it out. And he doesn't want to think either. This is why America is not succeeding, because people like him make it absolutely hard to succeed because he wants it all easy. So yeah, we're at a point in which he wants everyone to be stupid. He wants to be stupid. He wants to remain stupid. And thus, he doesn't succeed in the most critical of things possible. Right? Yeah.
To life, to regulate it to people. That is the path by which the United Nations will move from an alliance of states to an alliance of cultures and peoples. If we overcome the climate crisis and if we unite as humanity, we will manage to make the United Nations an assembly of peoples which seeks to make sure that every individual is free, making sure that every human being achieves their potential, and because the intelligence of human beings, illuminated by science, will make it possible to not only save life, but to fulfill the mission of humanity by expanding life into the stars. A humanity that is united and free can look at the stars and reach the stars, as the Romans, the legionnaires, thought of Judea when they used the word astra, or star. It's the time of freedom or death. Real death from missiles, but freedom is also real in the heart of human beings and its capacity to rebel and to resist. Thank you very much.
Basically, there are better ways than proliferating violence with weapons and equipment. There are better ways in actually representing your own country than just with violence. There are just better ways in doing things. So there is a lot to unpack on this, but basically this is what I think. This is definitely what I'm thinking. This is what definitely I would take this guy's words, Gustavo Petro Urrego. I would take this guy's words over Donald Trump, over Rodrigo Duterte, over anyone who wants to do things easy. Absolutely, I would take his words over Donald Trump or Rodrigo Roa Duterte. Bravo. Even if you are decertified as a leader, I'll remember you. I will absolutely remember you. You are not easily forgotten.